command bunker. I am Brian Griffiths, coming to you from the Jim Plunkett studio. My host, as always, Greg Klein.
Good to be here.
Good to be here. There is a lot going on tonight, not the least of which is the NFL draft.
Right.
But you're not here to talk about the NFL draft. You're here to talk about everything else that's going on God's green earth.
We got to leave something to Sports Talk Radio because they don't have anything else to talk about. So we'll leave that to them.
Ain't that the truth? We'll talk about the latest in pandemic talk, talking about the protest. We'll talk about some reaction, including a Baltimore Sun op-ed, and of course, Len Foxwell. Everybody's been talking about Len Foxwell recently. The governor has drawn President Trump's ire when it comes to COVID tests, which is interesting. And legislative Republicans, rather, are pushing back on voting. They're pushing back on masks and other aspects of the emergency order. And we'll talk a little bit about what we expect from tomorrow's rollout of the governor's plan to reopen Maryland. Plus, on top of it, there's a lot of political stuff going on. We broke the story this afternoon here at Red Maryland about Baltimore mayoral candidate TJ Smith being sued by former Red Maryland contributor and our good friend Jimmy Braswell, actually, for pension fraud. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. The General Assembly's not
back a little bit on that too, from our perspective, because
the General Assembly is not having a special session. The Maryland Republican Party will be having a virtual convention, and we'll preview the special election between Kweisi and Mfume and Kim Klacik. Greg, there's a lot going on tonight. Let's not wait any longer. Let's talk about the latest in the pandemic world that we are living in right now. And let's talk a little bit, Greg. Let's start by talking about the protests this weekend.
Start there. Let's do that.
Yeah. So you saw the coverage of the protest. You saw the protests that were down in Annapolis on Saturday. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I talked about this a little bit this morning on WGND with Mike Bradley. Look, it was the protests are what they were planned to be. The number of people who are wanting to see Maryland reopen is growing and growing. This is the beginning. There was a decent turnout. There were some goofy people that were down there, to be sure. There's some folks that are a little out there and very strongly Trump that are behind us, but there are also a lot of good, decent people that we know who are very upset. We've been talking about it for weeks, that are frustrated that, the kind of gloom and doom, what we were being told was going to happen, hasn't happened. We're seeing today we saw another 45,000 plus Marylanders filing for unemployment claims. We're rapidly approaching 500,000 Marylanders out of work because of the governor's shutdown here, and that pressure is building. And as I said this morning, look, that protest is the first. Every day that goes by, the pressure builds, the temperature gets higher, and it's going to get bigger. We know the folks. We know folks are organizing, and you know what? When you have any sort of political movement, left, right, whatever, you're going to have some people who are way out there. You're going to have some people that are, probably helping more than they're hurting. But the point is, there were a lot of good people who are trying to get the state back open. A lot of people that are hurting who are trying to do this. A lot of people that in a wide variety of ways are trying to get the governor to push him to do this. And, I think that what bothered me, and we'll talk about Len Foxwell in a second, because I thought you wrote an excellent piece about that. What bothered me, because Len Foxwell is a snarky jerk. Okay. So
I would use different words, but we'll talk about him.
I'll use stronger words. So that didn't shock me. It kind of bothered me when I saw some folks in the administration, high up in the administration, not going anywhere near that far, of course, but saying snarky things. And there was a video of somebody trying to get into a car, and it was kind of silly. And they were sharing that. And, it bothers me when I see people in the lieutenant governor's office, or maybe the governor's legislative liaison, kind of talking down to some of these people too. And, I would just say to those folks, you want to tread lightly. Okay. Because, obviously the governor I don't know that the governor cares what anybody thinks, to be perfectly honest, but, and it's totally up to him. But, Those folks are not your enemies. Those folks are your, by and large, people want to reopen businesses and get back to work, are a lot of the governor's natural allies and supporters of the governor. Okay. The people who give me a hard time about supporting that effort, and I was quoted 3 weeks ago in the New York Times and the Washington Post saying the cure is worse than the disease here in Maryland for many, many Marylanders. The people who are giving me the most pushback are the Bernie bros, and I had some guy from the Mike Gravel campaign telling me that I'm leader of a death cult who wants grandma to die so we can open up Dave and Buster's. I mean, that's the other side of this debate. So guys in the administration who think they're taking a shot at the boss, you need to understand that there's legitimate frustration that's growing. And I think, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it, but I think when we get to what some of the Republican legislative leaders are talking about,
we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Pretty reasonable reactions along the lines of what people in that protest are kind of pushing for.
There's a lot of things obviously to break down, because obviously you can't pigeonhole the protest as being this omni-Trumpy thing. Obviously, there was a huge Trump element to it, and I think that was highlighted by a lot of the coverage. The Patriot Picket was there organizing it. They never miss out on the opportunity to make noise. Can't find them when it's time to make a difference, but they're there when it makes to make noise. But there was so much more than that fringe of the party, that fringe of conservatism, that was there at the protest. It was certainly the more mainstream elements of the Republican Party were represented there. People, like you said, Greg, I'm not going to name names, of people that I know, who were there and were making their voices heard. Now, obviously, there's a residual, Hogan hate that's out there that was part of this, residual from whatever grievances people have with Governor Hogan, whether or not that he didn't bend the knee to Trump, or he hasn't done, hasn't done everything that they've asked for on their specific pet issue. But it's more, it's like everything else regarding this. There's no easy answer to explain what it was. The protesters themselves, for the most part, I didn't see anybody who was there to protest who was violating any of the governor's executive order,
which I think,
other than the part of being there without, a good purpose or whatever. They were in their cars. They were socially distanced for the most part. The people who were outside had masks on.
Right.
I
think that's one of the things that offended me, because I saw some comments by folks in the administration who we know, who are friends, and I'm not going to call them out by name, but I could, and I'm, consider this a warning, calling them out saying, oh, these guys are protesting wearing masks and they're wearing masks. No, these folks were following the rules, just like you and I are following the rules, just like most people in Maryland are obeying the law.
Yeah.
And they're doing what they're doing. They're not going to church. They're not going to work. They're doing what they're supposed to do, but they're suffering. And they're seeing that, all of this doom and gloom that was supposed to happen didn't happen. When the governor says we're going to be like New York in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks later, we're nowhere near that. And then he kind of retcons it to be, well, that was only if we didn't do anything, even though a lot of the closures were already in place when he said that. Yeah, the frustration is going to grow. And, it's not just because we have to wear masks. Now, there's some people for whom that's a tipping point. It's not for me. I don't totally understand that.
Yeah.
We can talk more about that.
We will.
To reduce it, just so you say, to reduce it just to it being Trumpists, or just reduce it to being people who don't want to wear a mask, or it's really not that different in substance, certainly not in scale, but to the overtop things that we heard from Len Foxwell. And that's what look, if you're a spokesman for, I don't know, a secretary in the administration, or someone who's not quite the governor, but pretty close to the governor, your tweets are public too. And, we can see those too. So just watch it.
Yeah. I've been like, look, since the beginning of this, and I've said this and I'm consistent with this, there was never a right answer as to what the governor should do what the right answer to all of this is, because we haven't had one of these in 100 years. The economy is much different. Everything is different from the last time we had a massive pandemic like this. I think there's an argument to be made that the reason that we're not like New York is because the efforts were already in place. I'm not going to argue that. I'm not interested in that conversation. I said an argument could be made. Reasonable people can agree to disagree on that right now. But I do think at this point, the thing that's kind of the tipping point for me, obviously, one, these unemployment numbers are out of control. Yeah. But also, two, is the fact that, and this point's been kind of brought up recently, the COVID-19 is a coronavirus. The common cold was the coronavirus. One of the things that are distinctive about coronaviruses is the fact that they mutate with great frequency. It's the reason why you can get a common cold every year, because it's not the same thing every year. If that's the case, and this coronavirus is going to keep mutating over time, and it's going to become either more virulent or less virulent, then we're screwed either way. If it's going to keep getting stronger, then there's nothing we can do about it. And we should continue to take precautionary measures, but open things back up. Or it's gonna mutate to a safer version of it, and we're gonna be okay. I think the thing that's frustrating people, Greg, in addition to not reduced hours, and I think, well, first off, the boating thing, and I know sounds like the governor's going to lift the boating restrictions this weekend. The boating restrictions were silly to start with. If you're talking about
them,
yeah, it doesn't make any sense other than, okay, we don't want people to have to rescue you. Okay, well, you're pulling people over for violating them. So how is that any different, really?
And the rules provided, if you were going out with a fishing rod to catch dinner, you still could do it.
There was a story in the Capitol, I don't know if you saw it, that basically said people went out for a joyride and they had fishing rods and they got pulled over by DNR, and then they saw the fishing rods and were like, hey, have a nice day.
Yeah.
The differences between non-essential businesses and essential businesses, even as it relates to the arbitrary, I think you talked about this last week about the comic book store, about, places that would like to, deliver things or would have things for curbside pickup. Right. I know there are places that are doing that anyway under the table.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, that's the way the economy works. I mean, it's not only, when you make something illegal, you create a black market for it. We know that's going to happen. I mean, that happens with every commodity in the world. That's the argument libertarians have always made for drug legalization. So it's going to, I think, and I know the governor's going to announce something tomorrow. We can talk about that. But for me, the frustration is, I agree with you. This essential, non-essential thing is getting worse. And maybe this is a good time we can talk about this haircut thing. Because
every day I get a little closer to shaving it off like I had back in high school.
I've got the gel in, so that's it.
Dude.
Here's the thing. And I've got the governor's the memo from the office of the governor's office of counsel, who, by the way, has never been more powerful or influential in the lives of Marylanders than they have been over the last month. I mean, these guys, they've never been able to write, memos that essentially have the force of law behind them. They're at this point, they're the de facto court of appeals. I'll put a pin in that. Because no courts are making bright line distinctions on or interpreting any of these orders. So they issue this interpretive guidance, which is a wonderful euphemism for, further explanation of the diktats coming from the governor. And what they say is, look, it's illegal to have a barbershop open. Barbershops and beauty salons are non-essential, but we don't think you should prosecute people if they open it up to allow for, and they don't use the words essential. They use the language of, I love lawyers, I'm a lawyer, I get it. The language of these orders, but essentially what they're saying is, if you are an employee of an essential business and you can get your boss to write you a note that says, you need to get a haircut to maintain the standards of your business, you can go get a hair, and not just a haircut, obviously coloring, obviously whatever.
Yeah.
And you can go do this. And here are all the safety restrictions. Now, you and I agree. I agree with you. Let's have the safety restrictions. Let's open businesses up with the 6 feet, the limited number of people in, the masks, the plastic, like we do for other places. I'm all for that. Let's open up the economy with those restrictions as much as possible. That's fine. You know, let the comic book store have curbside pickup with everybody wearing masks and gloves, you know, so that they can stay in business. Let's do that rather than this essential, non-essential distinction. But this is what we have in the state. So the way that it's presented, unfortunately, the media doesn't really challenge this. It's presented as, well, this is for first responders, and this is for those medical personnel and those folks working in the grocery store on the front lines, the heroes of our emergency. Well, the problem is essential businesses that would be covered by this would also include every bank teller. It would include new car salesmen. It would include all the people who work in the construction office of your local developer, because they're all considered essential too. And we've talked about this essential, non-essential distinction, and there's a lot of politics in that. So you're telling me that, you know, and how many people really have a job where having their hair a certain way is a requirement of the job? Not very many. And if we're talking about, you know, the police or something, you know, could they relax those because it's an emergency? I mean, this is what this really is about. At the end of the day, you realize we've created a privileged class, and now the government's literally giving privileges to the privileged class. If you're deemed essential, by the governor, you can, albeit with many restrictions, go get a haircut. Now, for a lot of, you know, they've had interviews with barbers and stuff, and some of them say there's so many restrictions, and they got to do it one at a time and do all this stuff. It's not worth their time to do it. But it's hard not to imagine that this is really about, you know, maybe a cabinet secretary whose roots are showing and wants to get her hair dyed and needs an exception from her buddies over in the office of law to be able to do this without violating this stuff. And you know, there's an old saying that, and I'm going to butcher it, but that socialism is for the people. It's not for the socialists. Okay. Communism's for the people, not for the communists. You know, that's kind of what we're seeing here. And you know, if you're an unemployed mom of 3, who's trying to figure out what to do with this, you don't deserve to get a haircut. You're not essential enough. You're not important enough. Well, according to the Office of Law in Maryland, you're not. And do we really think if we open this up with all the restrictions on it to everybody, not just essential workers, do we really think we turn into Italy and all the ICUs will be overflowing with COVID-19 patients? It seems like a small thing, but it's really, I think in a lot of ways, crystallizes the absurdity of what we're doing right now and why we need to dismantle it as quickly as possible. End of rant.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying right now. I mean, the issue at this point is the fact that, you know, like you said, there are some people can and some people can't. And that's not fair either, no matter how appreciative we are of the people who have been working, the grocery store clerks and the hospital, you know, and the doctors and the nurses and everybody else like that. And we are appreciative of them because they have kept society functioning to an extent. You know, at some point we're saying some people are better than others, and that is a problem if these restrictions are in place. And I think that's the thing. The critics of people talking about reopening the economy have kind of, you know, they've kind of forgotten about is the fact that nobody is saying let's open it back up and have no restrictions at all.
Right.
Nobody's saying that. I mean, look at what's going on in Georgia, which I know has drawn the ire of President Trump for reasons that are just, you know, the president's here and there and everywhere.
As our friend Jerry Rogers says, take him seriously, not literally. At least when he's tweeting, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance trying to explain the rationale. And I know supporters of the president have done so. But
Yeah.
to your point that you were making, our friends in Pennsylvania to the north, Georgia to the south, they're not opening it up without restrictions. And by the way, some, they've opened up tattoo parlors. Well, there's tattoo parlors who say, hey, I'm not going to open up while this is going on. And there are certain people who have sense enough not to go, but you let the market decide that.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like my body, my choice, right? That's what liberals say. And, look, would I go out right now to a restaurant? No. Would I go get a tattoo? No. Would I go get a haircut? You've seen my hair. I might be willing to suffer for that one. But, it's not like people are going to go around back to the way it was March 5th. People realize that things are different now. And that there's not going to be this kind of societal change, our societal change back to the way it was. Now, let's talk about some of the criticism that we have seen from, regarding these protests. And I think that it both relates around the similar theme. First and foremost, let's talk about the Baltimore Sun op-ed. I think that's the one that we should talk about first.
Go ahead.
Bacchanalia of buffoonery, harsh words, but reopening businesses before coronavirus under control fits that description to a B. Greg, we've talked about it 100 times. We've talked about it once. The attitude of the Baltimore Sun is of a far left-wing, state-controlled, state controlling every aspect of society. Those people on that editorial board make the Democrats in the General Assembly look like Rush Limbaugh. Okay? That's what we're talking about here.
They're way in there, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Every time, every time they write something like this, and at the same time they are cutting payroll, the unions are complaining about people getting cut. Nobody's subscribing to the paper anymore, and nobody seems to figure out why. Here's how this, and we've linked to it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they go on and on talking about this bacchanalia of buffoonery. Again, completely glossing over the parts like you and I talked about, how they were socially distanced, they were wearing masks for the most part. Nobody was being stupid. And then they get to the end of this. This is the last sentence. And they start talking about Len Foxwell. And we'll talk more about Foxwell in a second. They talk about how Comptroller Franchot was standing by Len Foxwell.
Right.
And the last sentence says, "Good for him. We may have our disagreements from time to time, but we can faithfully report that neither man is among the unevolved." Unevolved.
Yeah.
Unevolved. That's the language.
Sure.
The Baltimore Sun is using language that was used about African Americans in the 1900s to describe people who are against this, who want to reopen the economy with safety precautions.
Right.
And they wonder why these people they're calling unevolved aren't buying their paper.
Right.
For the umpteenth time. Not a coincidence that when we were brought in and that we were thrown out the door, that we were never replaced.
Yeah. Because believe me, we would have had and have written and have, talked about on the show for weeks, a more reasonable alternative. When you call people buffoons just because they think these restrictions ought to be lifted, it is the same kind of thing as calling people deplorables and, all this kind of stuff. It's the same kind of dismissive, elitist smuggery that Len Foxwell epitomizes, and frankly, Comptroller Franchot epitomizes, though he tries to pretend he's a man of the people. And the fact is, if you're on the side of these folks, and you call yourself a Republican or a conservative, and you're agreeing with these guys, you better check yourself. Because the fact that people criticize me or Bernie bros makes me feel like I'm on the right track. Okay, if you find yourself agreeing with Len Foxwell and that all these people are loser idiots who don't know what's best for them, which is underlining all of this, which is underlying progressive, especially the elitist progressive ideology, is that the people are a great unwashed mass of hoi polloi, and they're not smart enough to understand what's going on. And here's the problem. And I saw a friend, Professor Todd Eberly, talking about this, comparing the experts to, your local electrical inspection, some half-ass comparison that he's making. You know what? Your electrical inspector, number one, if your electrical inspector who came out from the county didn't know a month ago or 2 months ago one of the major causes of household electrical fires, you probably wouldn't have a lot of confidence in him. Like all of these experts who didn't know that you could transmit this virus asymptomatically, didn't know it 2 months ago. Okay. If you had your electrical inspector come out and make predictions that were turned out to be way off, and then tried to change what he meant to say, you might have a little less faith in him, and you might have a little bit more faith in, just having a guy come out and do it. The point is, you can't believe in the unquestionable expertise of these experts when they've shown definitively that they don't have good data, that they haven't gotten it right, and that fundamental things like how this virus is transferred, they've gotten majorly wrong, not years ago, but months ago, weeks ago, really. And so it's perfectly reasonable and rational and intelligent to question, a technocratic bureaucracy that's trying to lord all this over us. Meanwhile, none of them have any idea the damage they're doing to the economy. And I'm getting it, as conservatives, we've always pushed back on the idea of rule by experts and centrally planned bureaucratic anything. And yet that's exactly what we're living in now. And it doesn't work. I mean, Congress is going to bail us out. Well, they can print money, I guess. They can spend money like a drunken sailor, but look at the mess that they're creating. You put people out of work, and then you can't process all the unemployment claims. And we're supposed to act surprised that government can't handle this when it does it. Yeah, let's back off on the heavy-handed stuff, and let's open it back up. That's at least a reasonable, rational, intelligent way to look at what's going on. It's not buffoonery.
Yeah, it's I give the experts a little more of the benefit of the doubt, based only on the fact, as I mentioned, we talked earlier about the about the evolution of the virus. Again, the experts can disagree to disagree. What we can't all agree on, though, is the nonsense that Len Foxwell put out.
Yeah.
This douche canoe is really the only way I can say it. Prick.
I wouldn't add anything to what you wrote. If people haven't read your piece and looked at what he said and wrote about and what he wrote, and kudos to Dirk Hare and the state party for jumping all over this.
Yeah,
because there was a recognition that this was going to hit a nerve, and it sure did. And your piece, I thought, was really spot on.
So you've probably heard it by now, but just in case you haven't heard what Foxwell said, let's lure them into a big, this is talking about the protesters on Saturday, let's lure them into a big warehouse. We'll call it something real classy to suit their refined sensibilities, like American MAGA Platinum Palace, with a promise of all of the unfiltered camels they can smoke, all the Salisbury steak and banana moon pies they can eat, washed down by all the Old Crow and Ice House they can drink, plus autographs from Scott Baio and pics with Tawny Katane posing all sexy and everything on a sports car, just like in that old Whitesnake video. Get them in, bar the door, and let Darwin let Darwin work his magic, rather. Funnily, Scott Baio is actually sending Len Foxwell a care package right now with an autographed photo, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that's what he thinks of everybody who disagrees with him politically. Yeah. He said similar things about us. I mean, he's compared us to some kind of loser beta male frat boys or some sort of.
Again, I mean, Len Foxwell is a beta male frat boy. I mean, you've seen this idiot wear boat shoes and stuff like that. I don't trust anybody who wears boat shoes.
I don't know what he's done to earn that level of smugness, but
nothing.
No.
Len Foxwell's a loser. I mean, there's just no way around it. Look, you can disagree with people without being disagreeable. And Len Foxwell obviously has some sort of insecurity by being some sort of beta male prick who's never done anything with his life and probably has never been punched in the face. If he'd been punched in the face at some point in his life, he wouldn't act like somebody who has never been punched in the face. It's very clear Len Foxwell wouldn't have the balls to say this to anybody in person. Look at the people he hangs out with. He shows up on a podcast from time to time, with another beta male who's still looking for, still trying to kiss every ass he possibly can, looking for his first big boy job. Those are two kindred souls right there, each licking their respective boots in order to keep their job and to try to make it in this world. That's the thing. Foxwell's a loser. Franchot keeping him on his staff as a loser. It shows how both have this elitist, smug sensibility about them that neither one of them have actually earned. And they can go fuck themselves.
Okay. All right.
I mean, that's really all the end of it. I mean, every one of that crew can go fuck themselves.
Keep it yeah. No, so let's transition then from some of the reaction, because there were some Republican legislators. They've been in contact with the governor. They've all gotten together and you've been reading. They all want to push the governor to open things up. They've mentioned some things specifically that they want the governor to address. Some are going further than others. And I want to make sure we touch on all those points. But they're all pretty uniform. And again, these are the Republican legislators. These are the governor's allies in Annapolis, who are pushing this governor to go further on a number of items. Hopefully, again, we're going to have an announcement tomorrow. Hopefully he starts on that. But, I think they are hearing from their constituents more and more that this has to happen. We have to move forward from what we're doing and start opening things up. So I don't know where you want to start with that, because there's a number of pieces of that puzzle.
Well, yeah, Gerard, there are a number of pieces to that puzzle. Again, voting, I think we've already kind of covered.
Right.
I mean, like I said, the voting thing never made any sense. Obviously, Nick Kipke lives in my district. We have a lot of Bayfront in our district. We've got a lot of boaters in our district.
Right.
And there are a lot of boats when we walk down to the river that are just sitting there hanging out. And it's good for the environment, I guess, but there's really no reason. There was never really a good reason to stop with the boating.
There was never a clear explanation as to. And again, let's get away from this essential, non-essential, because that's a false dichotomy. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what's a real threat to spreading this virus and what can be done to minimize the spread. If you go out on a boat in the middle of the bay with you and your immediate family, socially distancing, you're apart from people, and you say, well, somebody could get hurt and the police are going to, well, they could stay at home and cut each other or fall down or have the ambulance have to come out. I mean, the first responders don't get time off because people are in certain places rather than others. They just, hurt themselves in different places. Okay.
Yeah.
So I never understood, I can understand closing a movie theater or a stadium or a casino. I get that. You got people crawling all over each other in close proximity. I get that, coughing on each other and everything. But a boat,
Yeah, so that should have never been done in the first place. Obviously, hopefully that will be taken care of with the governor's announcement tomorrow, along with as part of the reopening thing. Now, where things get a little wonky,
right,
is this mask business. And Delegate Dan Cox, an article we linked to from the Frederick News Post, basically is saying that Governor Hogan suspended the Bill of Rights, and that requiring individuals to wear face coverings when entering businesses was power not granted to him during a public health crisis. And man, I'm not seeing that one at all. At the very least, wearing face coverings at this point shows that you at least have some semblance of idea of what's going on. Greg, you're the lawyer, you're a litigator. You tell me.
Well, look, I guess it surprises me a little bit. Maybe it shouldn't, that the mask becomes this kind of flashpoint for a lot of folks. Here's the thing, though. And you look, Dan Cox is a good guy, and he represents the district where the area where I grew up and where many of my family members still live, and you know, you got a lot of great people up there who I'm sure agree with him. Here's the problem I have with Dan Cox on this stuff. Okay, he's a member of the bar. He's a member of the legislature. If you believe, Delegate Cox, excuse me, if you believe that the governor is acting in an unconstitutional manner, I think it probably does survive strict scrutiny. I'll talk about that in a second. But if you really believe that, you should be putting your money where your mouth is and filing a lawsuit. Look, Judge Barbara is keeping the courts open, and always has said that challenges to the governor's orders are something that the courts are going to be open to hear. They're ready, willing, and able to hear those cases. I've litigated challenges to state law and gone from complaint in circuit court to a decision by the Court of Appeals in 2 weeks. It can be done. Okay. So if you really believe that the governor is acting in an extra constitutional way, you should challenge it. I'd argue you have an obligation to challenge it if you really believe that. Now, I'm not convinced of that. And I think, frankly, the challenge has merit, even if it's unsuccessful, because we'll get the courts to actually outline some of the limits of what these limits are. That would be good law to have, even though it may not be what Delegate Cox would like to see. And it also shows that it also shows the governor that there's a willingness to challenge him legally and at least that there is some sort of constitutional check on what he's doing, even if ultimately that check finds that what he's doing passes muster. I think it'd be good for the governor, frankly, to have a court say, the highest court. And by the way, and this is what I disagree. I don't like Delegate Cox being a keyboard warrior on this and sending letters. And he can send letters to the governor, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what legislators do. But to get in a pissing contest on Twitter with Walt Olson or, you know, Professor Eberly or somebody else, or have this pissing contest in the editorial pages of the Frederick News Post as to whether the governor is acting constitutionally or not, is bullshit. Okay. The only opinion that matters as to whether what the governor is doing is constitutional is 4 out of 7 members of the Court of Appeals. And that's who you have to convince. Yeah. And that's what you need to do. That's what you should be doing. If you believe that, that's what you should be doing. Now, if you're not saying that what he's doing is unconstitutional, but you're merely saying that he has suspended our most basic civil rights, I think that's true. In the context of this emergency, there's no question that our most fundamental basic rights have been suspended, both under the state and federal constitution. That's inarguable. Now, we can argue whether that's a good idea, how long that should continue, but I'm not convinced it's unconstitutional. And by the way, when you challenge those things, one of the ways that the courts review those is they apply something that's called strict scrutiny. So the government's got to have a very compelling state interest in order to do that, and it's got to be applied in certain ways depending on which one you're challenging. You can challenge every part of the First Amendment, frankly, that's being limited in ways by what the governor is doing. And, I think it probably does survive strict scrutiny because of the emergency that we're in and because of the rationalization for it. But you know what? I don't like this guy being a keyboard warrior on this. I mean, Delegate Cox, if you really believe that what the governor's doing is unconstitutional, rather than making a big stink and using it as leverage to raise money and get your profile out in a very conservative legislative district, why don't you actually put your money where your mouth is and challenge it in court?
Yeah, I think for all, if you look at somebody like Don Dwyer, which, Don Dwyer had many faults, but he filed lawsuits when he believed things reached that level. He was never successful with them, but at least he, like you said, he put his money where his mouth is, and challenged them, and they were kicked out of court, and the law was settled, or the decision was made, or what have you. Right. As you pointed out, Greg, there is a good and substantial reason to challenge these. If the delegate is so motivated to send letters and to think that there is a challenge, then it's almost his duty as a delegate, I think, to file these lawsuits and determine where the boundary is.
And I think, frankly, as a member of the bar, we take
Okay.
an oath to defend the Constitution. If you really believe that the Constitution's being violated, and you're saying that publicly, put your money where your mouth is and file a lawsuit. If you're right and no one else is doing this, be the person to do it. If you want to be the leader of this movement, and you want to make sure that the governors, and by the way, don't tell me the litigation takes forever. I've done it. I've challenged state laws, and I've gone from passage to decision, throwing them out in the Court of Appeals, which, by the way, he voted to change the name to the Supreme Court of Maryland, which is an idiotic thing, which I'll never forgive any of them for. But I did that in 2 weeks, and that was before we had widespread electronic filing and everything else. The courts are there to do that. Believe me, Judge Barbara, and by the way, one of the people I worked with on that Schisler case years ago was Brynja Booth, who is now on the Court of Appeals. Okay, so there's a process there. We don't need more keyboard warriors. We don't need more politicians trying to, leverage a debate. What we need are real patriots and leaders, if you believe what the governor's doing is unconstitutional, to challenge it. That's what I would say. Having back and forth with the editorial page of the Frederick News Post is a waste of time, because frankly, it doesn't matter what you think or I think or Delegate Cox thinks or Walt Olson or the any newspaper in the world. The only people who can ultimately determine that what the governor's doing is unconstitutional are 4 of the 7 members of our Court of Appeals. Full stop.
Yeah. One last thing before we move on to something else. This week, the governor announced that he had obtained 500,000 tests from South Korea. And that apparently irked the president, who called out the governor. This not too long after the president said that the states were on their own to obtain tests. The governor did, and then that raised the ire of the president.
Yeah,
what do you make of all of this?
That's not totally what happened. I mean, the president, I think, fired before he had a full appreciation of the situation. Yes.
Hashtag evergreen.
Okay. All right. You're a never Trumper. I get it. Everybody gets it, Brian. You're a never Trumper. The president was critical of the governor doing this. First off, kudos to the governor for doing this. I know there's some people who want to criticize him.
No, absolutely. It was great.
But you know what? If the man is saying we have to have more testing to get open up, for the love of God, it's going to be cheaper to buy more tests from overseas. If that's what he needs to let us go back to work, do it. Okay. If that gets us back to work faster, do it. Pay whatever you got to pay, because it's cheaper than having 500,000 people out of work. The issue were 2 issues, and of course, the media didn't explain this very clearly, and the president kind of stepped into it and walked it back, and everybody and the governor, there was having tests, okay, and then there's having labs that can process the test and give you the results. 2 completely different things. The president was saying, we have plenty of labs. There were labs out of state. There are a lot of federal labs in Maryland, which got opened up. And the governor saying, well, great. We thank you, President, Vice President, for opening those up. Now we've got these 500,000 tests. And there was another shipment that came in from South Korea with some other things. And now we can step up our testing. What's likely going to happen? So I think it was a kerfuffle. I think it was the president in the heat of the moment doing what the president does, unfortunately, a lot of times. And the media wanting the story so bad to be about the president versus Governor Hogan. And unfortunately, those guys playing into it. I mean, I don't know why Governor Hogan's going on The View.
You and I both know why he's going on The View.
Okay. All right.
2024.
He's never getting elected president. We can set that another side. You can shake your head as much as you want.
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that's why he's doing.
Okay, you're probably right. I'm not disagreeing with you. Which is problematic when he's also trying to be, the leader of this and exploiting it for political gain is is something that he would be very critical of other people doing. But anyway, the politicians, I get it. So that was much more of a kerfuffle than anything that's going on. But look, the governor established these pillars in order to open things up, and he came out this week and said we're making great progress on at least 3, somewhat on all 4 of these things, with the hint that tomorrow we can start presenting a plan to open us up. I mean, what's frustrating about the reporting of this is that those 4 conditions to open up, those are artificial. Those are the governor's conditions. Okay. The feds aren't requiring anything. So, I'm glad he's going to feel more, if that's what he needs to do to feel more comfortable opening up, fine, let's do it. But my final point on this, Brian, when we start doing more testing, I think what we're going to see is what we're seeing in a lot of other places that have started doing massive testing, which is that this virus is way out there, much more than we realized, and that it's out there, and that the reality is, and again, I talked about this weeks ago, when you look at that chart, okay, with the really high curve and the really low curve and the dotted line, that's the ICU bed space, that x-axis is time. So we flatten the curve way below that dotted line, which is the line we can't cross, because then people will be dying in the parking lot, because we're nowhere near that now. I think we can all agree we're nowhere near that.
All right.
And we're pushing that line north, which is great. We absolutely should be doing that. But let's start to compress the time. The space under those 2 curves is the same. The spread is still going to happen. This thing is still going to go through the society. I think there are a lot of people who are still living under the misapprehension because the media has not explained this clearly. And if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. I'm not a doctor. But there are a lot of people who think that if we just shelter in place long enough, this disease will go away and no one else will ever get it. But that's not what those charts are saying. That's not what the doctors are saying. I mean, that's not what Fauci's saying. Fauci's saying we're still going to have this come the fall. To get to anywhere near normal, we're going to have to develop some sort of population immunity, which means it has to go through the culture. And we can try it, and widespread testing is going to show, and then we're going to follow up and narrow it down and whatever. But
we shall see.
Be a containment. We're absolutely. If that's what we got to do, let's do it.
Let's take a break as a much needed palate cleanser to talk about anything other than a pandemic. And we'll get deep into the weeds about politics, things we actually here really to talk about. Stick with us
now, but this is what our politics is.
True. Stick with us. You are listening to Red Maryland Radio on the Red Maryland Network. Did you know Red Maryland was on Patreon? By supporting Red Maryland on Patreon, not only do you support Red Maryland's efforts to grow the conservative movement here in Maryland, but you're going to get access to premium content, meet and greets, cool bumper stickers, and more. To support Red Maryland on Patreon, go to patreon.com/Red Maryland. Even $1 a month will help us grow the conservative movement in our state. And every dollar goes back into growing Red Maryland. That's patreon.com/Red Maryland. patreon.com/Red Maryland. And thank you for your support.
I've been thinking, and I feel like I could be a real asset to you guys. I want to help.
What? Wait. So first you wash your hands of politics. Now you want back in. Let's go flip-flopping, Mac. That's what Democrats do.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, I love technology.
Indeed. You are invited.
No, not what I wanted. Sorry.
That is outdated information. We're back. I'm Brian. He's Craig.
I'm sorry. I'm talking over you. I apologize. There was another ad I was going to play, so I apologize. But we're back.
That's okay.
Thank you.
It took Cincinnati 14 and a half minutes of their 15 minutes to announce they were picking Joe Burrow, which they knew they were doing in like February.
Okay. Well, whatever. They're doing their due diligence, seeing what offers they could get.
I guess, but hey, real quick, everybody.
Still
about the 9 o'clock hour next week, Greg and I will have a major announcement to make.
Yes.
That is all we're going to say about it. Okay. Major announcement next week about 9 o'clock. Okay. It'll be the most important announcement you've ever heard about Red Maryland, quite frankly.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah. So 9 o'clock next during next Thursday's show.
Correct.
Let's now talk about the politics of all of this.
That'll put the internets to twittering about
it. Yes, they will.
Tittering. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't.
First off, now let's talk about the breaking news we broke this afternoon over at Red Maryland, and that's TJ Smith.
I'm going to leave this to you because I read about this first at redmaryland.com. So this is all your story here.
There you go. I'll let you. I will let you do some legal analysis of it as well. So TJ Smith, a suit has been filed against TJ Smith and the Anne Arundel County government for pension fraud, and the complainant. I believe that's the correct term. The complainant?
Plaintiff.
Duh. The plaintiff is actually Red Maryland, former Red Maryland colleague, our friend Jimmy Braswell. James C. Braswell, Esquire.
Thank you. You didn't go to 3 years of law school to be called Jimmy.
No, you had to be from Pasadena for that. And the suit was filed today in Anne Arundel County Circuit Court alleging that Smith, and I quote here, wasted potentially millions of dollars of taxpayer funds through an illegal ultra vires agreement between Smith, Anne Arundel County, and the Baltimore Police Department, and that Smith, quote, conspired with the Baltimore Police Department to create a sham agreement to allow Smith to collect a full pension from the Anne Arundel County Police Department, despite the fact that Smith failed to work the required 20 years for his pension to vest. Now, a little background. One, Smith is running as a Democrat for mayor of Baltimore. Okay. He is one of the leading Democrats running for mayor of Baltimore.
Yeah.
He has gotten a lot of support, weirdly, from certain aspects of the business community and certain conservative, and I use that term very loosely here, circles. He's retired as the public information officer, the spokesman of the Baltimore City Police Department. And before that, he was the spokesman for the Anne Arundel County Police Department.
I believe
now, what this alleges is that Smith is getting a pension despite having only served 17 years in the Anne Arundel County Police Department as part of an arrangement where Smith was loaned to the Baltimore City Police Department for a certain period of time, and a certain amount of leave was used to make up for that extra years to kind of fudge his way to 20. We put a big giant disclaimer. See, we're not like other people. We put disclaimers in there when we have a conflict, when we have a potential conflict of interest. And we don't have a conflict of interest. I'll say that. Jimmy was a former Red Maryland contributor. He is a friend of ours. Until I got a phone call from Jimmy this afternoon saying, "Hey, I'm going to send you something." I had no idea he was doing it. I had no idea that any of this was coming. And you guys know, everything I know about this is on the page at Red Maryland, the story that I wrote. I know that I've spoken to Jimmy since then. I know he has been interviewed by, I believe, Channel 45, maybe Channel 11 as well, to be on the news tonight. So this is picking up hair.
He's very telegenic, so that he should do very well on TV.
So Greg, you're the lawyer here. Interpret what you know from what's going on here. I can tell you first off, the phrase ultra vires is what I'm not familiar with. I'm sure other laymen are not familiar with it as well. Maybe you can help us out with that.
It's a term of art. The point is that this it's complicated. The facts are laid out. I don't know all of the details, but so I'm not going to get too far into it. The little bit that I know, and from what I've read, and from what I understand, and I don't have any inside information, I found out about the suit from redmaryland.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jimmy did not hit me to this either. when we were getting together last week, I was completely blindsided by this whole thing. And we should mention Jimmy, who is an attorney but is not a litigator, is the plaintiff in this. He's represented by Ed Middlebrook's firm, former state senator and county council member here from the county. Ed Middlebrooks and his firm, very good litigation attorneys, with a lot of experience here in the county. So I want to get that out there right away. Look, time will tell. I know there are some people who will say this is, and have said, frankly, this is just political and it's without merit. It probably has some political aspect to it. I mean, yeah, but I wouldn't sleep on it being without merit. There's legitimate legal criticism of this agreement and whether what was done in recognizing. My understanding is there may be some sort of memorandum of understanding that was signed as part of this, and this challenge is not meritless. Let me just say that. We'll see what happens when the evidence comes out, and it'll have a chance to be litigated before November. And so, there'll be time for a response before the June primary, which is obviously critical to the mayor's race. But don't sleep on this thing, because I don't. The people involved are not shills. They're not going to do this recklessly, and don't be shocked if some point down the road you find out that there's an awful lot of fire with the smoke here.
Yeah, and the weirdest thing about this so far, before we move on, is the fact that the Change Annapolis Twitter account, which is affiliated with the Change Annapolis PAC, which
Right.
is ostensibly, there's really no way to say it. And it's quote here: a bipartisan group of taxpayers, business owners, and community leaders uniting to elect pro-business small government candidates. They actually tweeted out saying, and I quote, "This is a politically motivated and baseless lawsuit, and everybody involved with it should be ashamed." That's one, Greg, I haven't figured out yet.
Well,
A group that's supposedly good government, small government, pro-taxpayer is saying this is a baseless lawsuit. I haven't figured this one out yet.
I don't know if that's the organization or just Jim Appel who's doing that, who's a good guy. Look, there's a lot of people like TJ Smith. I mean, our friend John Frenaye is not going to be very happy about this lawsuit, Big Five. I can tell you that right now. There's a lot of people like TJ Smith from the time that he was here. They see him as kind of a straight talking, honest broker, outside of the corrupt machine in Baltimore. And, they're not going to be happy about this. And, so that's why I think you get the hot takes and the knee-jerk reaction. But we'll see. We'll see.
One other thing I want to
courts of law, Delegate Cox, for these
it's almost like
great.
It's almost like it proves your point.
Litigation is wonderful.
One other thing, talk about the mayor's race in Baltimore. Another weird thing that happened over the weekend, Greg, is we got caught in this Twitter stream of consciousness rant. I don't know, Twitter vomit. I don't know what you want to call it. And Catalina Byrd,
right,
who alleges that, who is running for mayor of Baltimore as a Republican,
correct,
alleged that we endorsed somebody else in the race and that we're against her and all this other just absolutely kind of nutty stuff.
Yes.
And
it was, I mean, I don't know, maybe we should share it, but it was really weird. And look, there are people in politics who I don't always understand the thought process. Let me just be as generous as I can be. They don't think in a way, and maybe it's the limitations of Twitter, that clearly communicate to me the rational understanding of the rational message that they're trying to send.
Yeah,
we and it was and Brian was the one who did the responses. We clearly corrected that we've not endorsed anybody in the Republican primary for mayor. We haven't. We've not come close to endorsing anybody. We're not pushing anybody. I don't think that's a reasonable inference. Now, we've had polls. People have voted in polls. We've read comments from people who've left comments, which are not our views, believe me.
No.
And I think Ms. Byrd or whoever was responding to us was kind of inferring that was us supporting them, or and we're always tied in. We're part of the establishment, and the party's doing this and the party's doing that. Believe me, I don't think the party really cares about the Republican primary for mayor, because that's another lance at windmills.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the original tweet, and I will read it. I shared it on the in the Facebook thing. Here's the original tweet, April 19th at 6:42 p.m. If I understand correctly, at Red Maryland and the higher ups of my party think a whispering former pastor who never had a church is better suited to take on any of the Dem frontrunners. Y'all wondering why I laugh my ass off daily while also rolling my eyes. What?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we know who she's talking about, but again, we haven't endorsed anybody. And look, we're not even saying that her criticism is way off base. I mean, we've heard this about Shannon Wright, Pastor Shannon Wright, and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. But it's completely ridiculous. And you get people, and this is why the internet's terrible. And politics is terrible. You get people who, I mean, she's just lashing out. And then we responded and said, hey, wait a minute, we're not endorsing anybody. I don't know where you're getting that from. And then there's a further response to that, isn't there?
Yeah, here it is. Like, nah, y'all just keep hosting polls. GOP loon at that. Allow non-city residents to vote in and playing the 50. Get out my mentions. Y'all ain't been here. Don't need y'all now.
Get out of her mentions. We're replying to something she wrote at us. If you add us on something like that and you're getting the facts wrong, we're correcting the facts.
And when I pointed out that
polls, and because we have polls, whoever wins our poll, we're somehow pushing. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
And oh, by the way, Shannon Wright didn't even win the damn poll this month.
Right. I don't know who won. Honestly,
and
I couldn't tell you one. I'd have to go on and look for myself.
Yeah. And the other one, the last one, and then she got the mute button. Because we pointed out, so you made a logical statement you knew to be false and got mad when we said so. Logical. And then she said, my statement was illogical, but they supporting people trying to defy the governor, cause science don't matter, right? Just politics and emotions. Damn, I missed that memo. Greg, I'm a very smart guy, and I have no idea what the fuck she was saying there. I think.
All right, take it easy with the
I half think, might be a little bit of the bubbly. But,
well, that we don't know that.
I said it might be.
Yeah, I know. The first part was she admitted she was illogical. So at least we can put that to bed. Then she changes the subject, which is a common tactic that people do when they get in an argument, especially when they're losing, is they change the tactic. Talking about, I guess, the protesters in Annapolis or something like that, or, Republicans that aren't supporting the governor or whatever, fine. Is that what we were talking about? I mean, there was some screed about our state party chairman too at some point, I think, but we do not have a dog in the hunt in the Republican primary for mayor. Nothing, not anything.
No, we have not endorsed in the prime. And it's funny because a couple of months ago, she was snooping around like she wanted our endorsement. That's the funny part about all of this. Asking if we were going to do a forum and kind of snooping around if we were going to do endorsements. So you could tell she wanted the endorsement and then decided that, I guess, when she didn't get it, that she was going to make up some fantasy tale about the big giant conspiracy. And we'll talk more about big giant conspiracies later, but
it's not like it's not like we're out endorsing other people too, which we should probably get to the next thing that we want to talk about, because people think we're behind that too. So,
you want to talk about that? I was going to talk about the special session next, but do you want to talk about, or do you want to
do that, and then we'll talk about the special session? So
okay.
So hey, all of you citizen statesmen, now's the time to listen.
Yeah. So let's preview the election. Last week I talked about the grand conspiracy that Kim Klacik thinks is going on, but where Governor Hogan is denying, is trying to conspire with Kweisi and Mfume to defeat her. That apparently did not go over well in the pro-Klacik circles. A certain WBAL radio host,
a self-styled
citizen statesman, has apparently drank this Kool-Aid and buys into the conspiracy.
Well, he put up a post that was saying that all Ms. Klacik was doing was quoting something that was said at the Board of Elections. He's since taken that post down. Am I correct?
Yes. I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know what that's all about. And this is a guy who has, and he has a very smart podcast, the Citizen Statesman podcast, so much smarter than we are. But who likes to add us occasionally to get some attention, and usually he ends up losing those arguments. This time he wanted to try to make something out of it. I know some of the comments were kind of, our friend Eugene Craig was like, "Hey, I listened to it." And by the way, please do share it. Please do share it and tell people to watch, even if you think we're
we love that. Yeah,
please.
People can learn something.
We're perfectly fine. Our ratings last week are the biggest we've had so far on this forum. So please, we take no offense to it. But I still had a loss to understand. He implied that we were saying something that was demonstrably wrong, and I don't know what it was. And I've gone back and listened to it, and I don't think it was anything that I said. And I guess, and I don't know
what I said either.
Well, I don't know, because he said, I think he was trying to say that Kim was referring to a statement that was made at the board the board, and if we had listened and been prepared and did a smart podcast rather than being junior level shock jocks or whatever he called us, we would know that. Yet he never does identify it, and then he took the post down.
Well, he's talking about the statement that was made about the state board of elections complying with the governor's order, which I don't think anybody was questioning. The issue that I have, that you have, is this chuckle-headed nonsense that there's some sort of grand conspiracy to get Kim Klacik, like that's the thing that the governor is focused on right now. Well, and only people in the bubble, that warped orbit where some people think that Kim Klacik is God, actually believe that. Tory's problem is that he has a constant theme of this. This is a constant problem with him, where he gets mad at us, says something stupid, and then has to walk it back when he gets called out on it. And look, I understand. I have forgotten more about state and local politics than Tory Snow has ever known. I understand that. But you're out of your league, kid. Let the adults handle this one. I understand that for reasons that boggle the mind, you have a WBAL show on the Saturday afternoon death slot. I get that.
I don't.
But let the adults handle this one.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Look, and the fact that we've been doing this for over a decade and a half obviously gets us no credit with anybody, or that we have some depth of knowledge that folks who just came here a couple of years ago or were from the states or were Democrats since we've been doing this, that we don't get any credit for that. Guy's citizen statesman. He knows what he's talking about. Let's talk about the race, though. And by the way, who the hell refers to themselves as a citizen statesman? Okay. I mean, how
Don Dwyer did.
How arrogant and stupid is that? Okay. You ran for county council and lost. Okay. You want to be an activist and a podcaster and whatever? Great. That's fine. You get a slot on BAL, go. Great. BAL we have a lot of friends on BAL, and they do great work, and they have a very diverse cast of hosts that they have there, and God bless all of you. Okay. As far as that goes, but if you're going to come at us, which again, you do it occasionally to get ratings. And so we're giving you what you want because we're talking about you, but you haven't earned citizen statesman, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. And, if we got something wrong, tell us what we got wrong and stick to it. By the way, I want to address one other comment, because I did see his post that some guy who who apparently you pissed off because you called him racist or something.
Yeah.
Put in there that we are a subsidiary of redstate.com. I mean, the internet is full of such nonsense. Red Maryland is not a subsidiary of redstate.com. Redstate.com is a wonderful website that is edited by our friend and Red Maryland co-founder Strife, but there's no formal relationship. Red State is a business. They are a commercial entity that is running that website. They're owned
by Eagle Publishing, and they actually make money.
Yeah,
Red Maryland is owned by
me
and him.
Yeah,
and this guy.
So there's no relationship. There's no subsidiary, whatever. to say that. And he points out, well, you know, we should report them to Red State. Please do. Strife knows everything
Please
that we're doing. Okay, I understand.
You can't fix stupid, Greg. You can't fix stupid, man. Come on, you know this after all this time.
Right. Strife has taken Red State in a more Trumpy direction, followed the audience, and they've had great success. God bless them. Strife, by the way, was a Trump skeptic just like we were in 2016 and joined us in endorsing Ted Cruz. Yep. Just saying, for what it's worth, if you're interested in the actual facts, that really all you'd have to do was do a Google search and look at our own website and you'd find that out. So
now, come on, Greg. People just shoot their mouths off. They don't know how to search. They don't know how to do research. They just think, again, that they're the smartest person in the room and that they know everything when they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground.
Yeah, but by all means,
all of them should keep their name out of our name out of their mouths. Quite frankly.
All right, settle down.
They haven't earned that.
Settle down.
I'm fired up now.
Well, yeah, but you're not any better than these guys are doing this kind of silly stuff. The point is, if you want to report us to redstate.com, go ahead. But
please do.
There is no factual basis that anyone can find to say that we are a subsidiary of redstate.com. It's just not true. And if you think that, you're either you're ignorant and you're showing it very clearly. So don't be
there's a reason why he was blocked.
Jerry Rogers is in our saying he was a Trump guy. He was a Cruz guy, but he's a bit Trumpy. No, you're full blown Trumpy. And we were quoting you earlier, so giving you full credit, of course.
Jerry Rogers, WBAL's Monday through Friday, 3 to 6. Right. See, WBAL does hire smart, intelligent people.
Fantastic guy.
Yeah, and Andrew Langer 7 to 10 on Saturdays. Later on Saturday goes downhill, but Saturday morning you're good.
Now let's not do that. Let's not do that.
So speaking of, let's get back to the race at hand. Yes. We're kind of far afield right now. Look, Kim Klacik's going to lose, and she's going to lose big. Let's not pretend otherwise. I think that she will overperform what it would have been. This is the irony of all this, Greg. I think the thing that frustrates me the most. Kim Klacik is going to do better because it's an all mail-in election for the most part, except for those 3 precincts.
Republicans, absolutely. Yeah, that's why Democrats don't want it to be that in June.
Right.
I think,
she's still going to lose. I can do math.
Very much. Let me say this though, to her credit. When you look at the most recent campaign finance number, she's been very competitive fundraising wise, which I think is impressive for a challenger against someone like Kweisi and Mfume. So I think she deserves credit. And I was very surprised how competitive and how close that was. Now, we're in a totally different environment than I'm sure her gang ever had to do a campaign. I don't know how you do a campaign in this type of environment. She's running against a guy in a heavily gerrymandered district that certainly has the resources, but has this enormous advantage in registration and name recognition and media advantage too. Let's be fair. She's fighting uphill all the way. And so it's going to be very, very difficult for her to win, which is kind of why it's a little frustrating to fall into kind of the tropes of saying it's a conspiracy and, if all the Republicans come out and vote, I'd win. Look, if she got 70,000 votes, which is how many Republicans live in the district, she'd probably have a real good shot at winning. But I get the message, but if people around her are really believing that kind of stuff, I mean, it hurts your credibility for somebody who frankly is a credible candidate and come June has a very good argument for being the most credible, and it's a relative thing, I understand, the most credible candidate in the race for November as our nominee.
Yeah, relative is I think the good thing to say there. I mean, look, there's no question that she will be able to, assuming, and I'm making an assumption here. I am assuming that the Trump base, which is not a local base. I think that's the thing, the key here. She's not raising money in District 7. She's not even raising money in Maryland. She's raising it nationally.
The money all spends the same.
Exactly.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. The money all spends the same, but getting the voters out, they got to be voters who live in the district. So that's the key,
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if the money dries up a little bit after next week. Just because if people support Trump people who are winners, once she has lost that election, will that money keep going in? That's not to say it won't. That's not to say that she's certainly not the overwhelming favorite on the primary on June 2nd. Right. But I think that there is I think there is a certain I think the numbers will dry up a little bit just based on the perception of winner versus loser, even if that's not necessarily a fair perception. But let's be realistic, Greg. Let's be honest. This is her shot.
Be honest.
She's not going to win in November because there's going to be such a high Democratic turnout, an anti-Trump Democratic turnout, particularly even more in the suburban areas of Howard County that would traditionally vote Republican. There's going to be an anti-Trump turnout. Okay? This is her shot. If she can win on Tuesday, which I think at best the odds are 100-1, at best, that gives her at least a puncher's chance in November. But if the math's not on her side for this special general election, which it's not, the math's really not going to be on her side in November. And then once November's over, she'll go get her gig at OAN or Fox News or whatever, and she'll never run for office again. Well, that's what's going to happen.
We'll see. I agree with you that a low turnout special mail-in only primary has the opportunity to be to have such low turnout that a challenger Republican in an open seat would have a better chance than a presidential election year in November, even if you didn't have a presidential nominee on the Republican side that ginned up Democratic turnout in a district so heavily gerrymandered to favor the Democrats. Because you're not going to have the only people who are going to be voting in this race are people who are voting for Congress. So it's not just people voting D down ballot. So yeah, I agree. This is a better chance than what anybody on the Republican side would get in November. So we'll see how she does.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
More than likely she gets at best 35% at best.
I think 35%, given the makeup of the district, you have to look at past results. That may not be horrible. I don't know.
Yeah, it's usually in the 30 to 35%.
Every Republican votes for her, she can win.
We'll see. I would like to be proven wrong.
If she could make that happen and still lose, I think then she deserved the gig at One American News Network. Okay. The point is, if you could do that, then you got a real future in politics.
So let's talk.
But it's going to be real tough.
So let's talk about the brightest piece of political news we've heard this week, which is that the Maryland General Assembly is not coming back for a special session. Awesome. I think they could finally read the tea leaves and realize, maybe this isn't the time to come back, either from the perspective of the safety of the legislators, which again, we blasted them, and rightly so, for staying as long as they did to pass non-essential legislation, but also the fact that the budget's been blown to shreds. My new opinion piece over at the Capitol today talks about how Maryland needs to reorient its budget. It'll be in tomorrow's paper. Needs to reorient its budget focus on tax reduction and on cost reduction and cutting non-essential spending. I think the governor, as we already heard, is already going down that road. He's going to veto hopefully a lot of stuff, particularly all the spending bills, particularly all the taxes, particularly Kerwin, because there's no money for it anymore. And there was never money for it to start with. It was irresponsible to start with. I'm happy that the General Assembly, that Senator Ferguson, that Speaker Jones saw the writing on the wall. Nothing that's going to be vetoed, even if it is essential. Nothing, and I shouldn't really say essential because it's not essential. Nothing that the governor is going to veto can't be taken up again in January, which is good for taxpayers and good for the budgetary process, because that at least gives additional perspective about how much the economy has been damaged and how, what the recovery process is going to be. Certainly they should not override any of this crap, particularly Kerwin, because we're still not going to be able to afford it. But hopefully at least coming back in January will allow a certain perspective on things at that juncture. And then if they do decide to meet virtually, which I know they're kicking the tires on, I'm not sure that dog's going to hunt. Then they could at least try to figure out what they're doing there. Your thoughts, Greg?
Yeah, I don't like the idea of them meeting virtually. And
no, I don't either.
The idea of having, first off, if the governor does, we don't know what he's going to sign or veto. He's hinted, as you suggest, because of the difficulties with the state budget, that's something that you should keep in mind when he makes these decisions. Okay. My understanding is we're within the 30 days. We had Justin Reedy on Senator Reedy on a few weeks ago telling us that they were going to hold it till the normal sine die, which presumably has happened. I'm shocked there's not more reporting on that fact because that's so important. But you see in the Baltimore Sun's like, well, he's got a few weeks to decide. He's got 30 days to decide in the middle of this crisis. I mean, it's kind of a big deal. Tactically, I think having an end of May, there's nothing that the legislature has to pass legislatively to deal with the crisis. The governor seems to have all the power that he wants. Maybe he's taking more than he even has if you listen to Delegate Cox. The Board of Public Works can deal with reducing the budget in the interim, which is what part of what that very unique Maryland institution is designed to do. And by the way, how great is it our friend Mark Nugent being close to the lieutenant governor now? He sent pictures out so we can talk about it. Right at the Board of Public Works, having a close Red Maryland connection, which I don't know if he admits being one of us anymore or not. I kid. But having that close to the Board of Public Works does make me sleep better at night. So there's no reason for him to come in. And tactically, from the Democrats' perspective, if the governor does override these things when we have 500,000 people out of work, overriding it in May is a bad look.
Oh, yeah.
Better off kicking it to January, hoping things are a lot better, and then reevaluating. So I think tactically that was the way to go. Look, they're not going to go away. They may try to repackage some of this stuff. If we're going to have a huge deficit, or we're going to have a deficit problem, the debate's going to be just like we saw in 2008 and 2009 after the Great Recession, raising taxes to balance the budget versus making real cuts, most of which, of course, are mandated. So the governor's going to be insisting on, some sort of budget reconciliation or scaling back the mandated spending, which is something he's been on for a long time. The only thing I'd add to that is, and this is another one where I'm going to take some issue with the governor. The governor's been advocating for the feds to give additional relief to the states because
I don't like that at all.
That's a bailout. I'm sorry, Mike Ricci. That's a bailout. The federal government didn't shut down business in Maryland, so there's no economic activity and the sales tax went down. They didn't require federal government didn't require people to stay at home, so there's no gas tax being collected. These, and this economy has not gone down because of the COVID crisis. It went down because of government action, the aggressive, unprecedented actions that the governor likes to take credit for. That's why it happened. So the idea that that Washington should print more money to bail out the state and the localities, I think is at the very least unfair. And the fact is, as conservatives, this is when we should be saying, hey, this is why we spend too much money in the state, and let's get our priorities and let's get our house in shape, and on a county level as well. Now, do I really think that the majority leader is going to let states go into bankruptcy? No. Do I think that probably at the end of the day, Congress does bail them out because they, what's another $1 trillion between friends? Yeah, they probably will. But I agree with you. I don't like the governor advocating this. It is absolutely 1,000% a bailout. And, basically from a conservative economic perspective, the idea that the government has to be the engine, government spending has to be the engine of economic growth is a very Keynesian idea that, Hayekian conservatives like us should reject out of hand. And
yeah, I totally agree.
It bothers me that Governor Hogan, and I understand politically why he's in the position to advocate for it.
Yes.
But boy, there better be, I know there's some right-thinking people in that administration, including, I would hope, our budget secretary, who are saying, wait a minute. I mean, is this what we signed on for? No. And the governor in the past too, the governor understands that the more government spends, less people have for themselves. And, there's a lot we can cut. We've been talking about that since 2007 on things the state can cut here.
And I think that's the thing that really frustrates me about this push for this push for Congress to do the bailout or to allow bankruptcy for the states is the fact that I understand not every state has a budget, a balanced budget requirement like Maryland has. I mean, we are constitutionally bound to have a balanced budget. And it's going to be states that have lower populations, like Maryland. Our taxpayers are going to get fleeced in order to bail out California and New York and Illinois and all of those big Democratic union-dominated states where they will just give money out to everybody. They don't have budgetary restrictions, and everybody assumes that the cow's not going to come home and that they're never going to have to pay it back, and they'll just figure out how to deal with it later. That's the problem, is the fact that California and New York think they are too big to fail.
Yeah, and
ultimately, Congress may prove them right.
Well, we'll see. It'll certainly be an interesting fight. Well, I mean, it also, and again, I understand as head of the NGA, and he's in this position, but this is a governor who's been saying for years we spend too much. There's so much in the budget he'd like to trim more, but he's hamstrung. Okay, this need would create very great leverage for him to really go in with a hatchet and really, have the I'm keep blanking on the name, the budget the BRFA bill and all BRFA bills in next year's session, and have a lot of leverage in order to do that. And there's so much stuff we've talked about that, let's get our priorities in line. Let's get serious about the requirement, and what are we bailing out? If we don't do that, at least do that first. What are we really bailing out? We're bailing out a lot of the wasteful spending that our state engages in.
Yeah.
And what the governor's asking for is for the federal government to bail out the state of Maryland's bloated budget, which he himself has been critical of how big it, he's limited the growth because he can trim the part that he can, and it hasn't grown that much because he's been able to do that. And obviously there are going to be greater needs that have to be met, and we do have those budgetary requirements. But, we did this. We raised taxes and had a bailout from the federal government to the states back in 2008, 2009. That was the O'Malley approach.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we wanted somebody different this time.
I think that ultimately he will follow his approach that he has in the past. As you point out, I understand the political realities of his NGA gig, but it is disconcerting to hear it coming from his mouth. I totally.
And I think Congress will bail him out too.
Because they will bail him out.
Yeah. Because
everything,
And they already have to some degree. I know that's part of what just passed was a little bit of that, but.
But again,
I know our friends at Mako don't like us having this. They're very uncomfortable with this sort of thing because
I hear you.
Represent government.
Yeah, we don't represent government. We don't believe in printing new money. It's like everybody forgot. And again, this revisionist history about the Great Depression is coming back now too. That that the New Deal saved us and all of Roosevelt's saved us. No, it made it worse.
I know.
It's people think that this New Deal Keynesian stuff is what bailed us out. No, the war bailed us out. if the war hadn't happened, I don't know when we would have gotten out of the depression.
Oh my God. I mean, conservatives have been writing and studying for decades about how many of the New Deal policies extended long-term unemployment unnecessarily and perpetuated a lot of the overwhelming demand of the Second World War and that kind of spending. I know. It's frustrating at this point in my life hearing the same fights being fought over and over again. And it's really frustrating when we have to explain it to people on our side. But
yeah, well,
that's why. Actually, I don't. I haven't had a drink since the start, but I should. I probably should.
You probably should. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with a legislator earlier this week, and I won't name names, who talked about.
Did he start with you in a high school production of Bye Bye Birdie?
No, it did not. We had a good conversation about beer, actually, and how both of us are making sure that we're not being like some people who are trying to graduate to professional class before the end of all of this.
I don't know. I follow you on Twitter, so.
No, I'm not doing anything that I don't do normally. It's not like some of these people who are having 2 or 3 drinks a night and getting plastered and then working from home in the morning. It's like, no, I'm keeping it in its wheelhouse. Greg, the Raiders are actually on deck for their draft pick. The Jets are on the clock. Yeah, so I can tell you that they won't get Tua, they won't get Justin Herbert, and they won't get Chase Young. That's pretty much the only people I know who have been drafted so far. So, that I recognize who they are.
So should we transition now to what we're watching on TV, which is?
But I can tell you this real quick: we are 10 picks into the draft,
right?
And the only offensive players that have been taken are quarterbacks and 1 offensive lineman. There have been no wide receivers or running backs taken in the first 10 picks.
There you go.
Just kind of fascinating.
There you go. So fascinating.
Nothing has changed with me. I've started watching I realize now that on Twitch you can watch live baseball in the morning from Taiwan.
Oh,
so I started watching that in the morning. You could. Yeah, each. There's only 5 teams in the league, and they show the games online. Of course, it's all in Mandarin. The commentary is in Mandarin.
Right.
The team names are in Mandarin. Thankfully, there's only 5. It's pretty easy to figure it out.
For baseball, you're watching.
Yeah,
you're watching Chinese baseball in Mandarin.
Yeah.
Wow.
And thank God the score is in Arabic numbers at least. So at least I know they're color coded. So I at least know who's winning. And who's hitting at any given time. But yeah, I was watching it the other day, and then this morning I turned it on. It was a freaking rain delay, and I'm like, "Come on, God, what are we doing here?" I understand ESPN is going to start broadcasting the Korean League soon.
Oh, really? Okay,
that's what I understand. I have not confirmed that yet, but I understand they are talking about broadcasting the Korean League because the Japanese league hasn't started yet. They've continued to push it back, and I would be all in if we can get Oryx Buffalo games. If Madison could show Oryx Buffalo games, that would be great. They'd probably get good ratings because Adam Jones now plays for Oryx, so people would probably watch AJ play. But they kept pushing this idea. They keep pushing these.
Really, folks.
They keep pushing this idea of starting the baseball season in these neutral sites, and first it was the Arizona plan, then it was the Arizona and Florida plan, and now they've got the 2 ballparks in Texas, and that they want to play all the games at dome stadiums because then they can, it doesn't get too hot and they can control the rain. You're still looking at like triple headers every day.
Why don't they just all fly to Korea? That's the place. That's the thing. Dude. Get them all on some planes and fly to Korea. It's not that much longer than Arizona. It's only a few hours beyond that. And you're going to be there for weeks anyway. I mean, why not? That sounds like a brilliant idea.
Hey, it's summer in Antarctica. Build a ballpark. It won't take long.
Well, I think they have more infrastructure. You just need a stadium and a couple of hotels. That's all you really need, right?
All you need to do is build a camp that can hold about 1,000 people. You get the umpires, the training staff, and the players down there, and the announcers can do it remote. You've got the camera guys,
right?
It's you go to like the parks and they have like the clover leaf of ball fields,
right?
You knows, you look overhead. Yeah, you can just do that. Just put them all in one place. You're not going to need that much part of Antarctica.
There you go.
Am I really advocating baseball in Antarctica right now?
I was more serious about Korea since they're able to play there, but whatever, that's fine. Just my recommendation. I watched Death of Stalin. Good, not great.
I haven't gotten to it yet.
Okay.
Good, not great. Okay.
Good. To go in with because the expectations I had. Oh man, everybody says this is amazing. It wasn't amazing. It was funny. It was good, not great. Definitely worth a watch on Netflix. Hulu, FX on Hulu has the series What They Do in the Shadows, which is a comedic vampire stuff. Pretty funny. Not family friendly. Pretty funny stuff though. So I've been watching that, and I'm just about done watching Community, which I realize now really I only needed to watch the first 2 seasons because those were the only ones that were really good.
Don't you hate that? You get into a show and then it's like,
Well, I kind of knew some of that because I was a fan of Dan Harmon and I knew he got fired season 3 and I kind of knew some of the backstory, but I never watched the show on a regular basis. So that's what I'm finding, which is kind of because the last 2 seasons they only did like 12 episodes a season or something. So
I know there's actually apparently a new episode of Community coming out soon. I saw it's the COVID-19 special of Community.
Okay, all right.
I'm not joking, by the way.
I believe you. They have time on their hands.
The show that the show that makes me think of that is, and you know me, I'm not really a sci-fi guy, but did you ever watch Sliders back in the day?
Sure.
I only ever watched the first 2 seasons of that when it was on Fox, because then it went to sci-fi, and then it really kind of leaned into like the weird sci-fi stuff.
Right.
First 2 seasons were great, and then I watched the first episode of that new stuff, and it's like, I'm out. Because then it was no different than any other monster blow 'em up show that was going on the Sci-Fi Network at that point. So what was really, what was really the point of continuing watching? I still got my wrestling. I got that going for me, which is occupied. Yeah, that's what I say. It's like every day's the same. It's like I watch wrestling. I watch, I watch
baseball.
I watch Chinese baseball, and I watch Ozark, and I do this show with you. The Raiders, by the way, are on the clock.
Okay. Good to know.
So, yeah, it's like I saw a question in the comments about the curling championships in Morocco. I haven't actually seen any curling on recently. I do watch curling from time to time, which probably doesn't shock you.
No,
didn't know Morocco was involved. So
saddens me. But
why does it sadden you? What's wrong with curling?
I don't know.
It's overweight white guys who drink beer and do a sport. What is there not to like about this?
Okay, that's fine. Okay,
they don't drink during serious competition.
It's a boring sport, but I get it. You have a need for sport. If you're watching Chinese baseball, I get it. Okay. So all
Nothing
right.
wrong with Chinese
there you go. Those are my recommendations for the week.
I will watch whatever baseball I can get my hands on. Would you rather me talk about watching marble racing, which I'm still doing too?
Okay, so I am interested in this a little bit now. Marble race, is it live marble racing, or is it some sort of video game marble racing, or
but it's real marbles and people build tracks and there's an announcer and there's teams and there's standings and everything.
And where do you watch this?
YouTube.
Okay. All right. Everything's on YouTube.
Yeah, everything's
on YouTube.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right.
Yeah, there's actually a Formula, the Formula E racing, which is actually the F1 version with electronic cars, is actually co-sponsoring one of the leading marble racing guys on YouTube.
Sure.
And by the way, there's a feud between like the top guy and the fans of this other guy.
Right.
It's like everything else. Everybody breaks into their camps and argues about dumb minutia.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Anyway. We should probably bring this into play.
Why don't we wind it up? Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We still got quite a few people watching right now, so we appreciate it. We have hung out until the end, and all of you who have been watching. If you please tell a friend, please share on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Share it in your Facebook groups, share it on your wall, share it on your Facebook pages, send it to a friend. Look, you're the force multiplier. Nobody else is doing this. And there are a lot of things that we talked about here tonight that nobody else is talking about, and from a perspective that nobody else is presenting. So please share it. Let people know what's going on. Big reminder, big announcement next week, the biggest in the history of Red Maryland, next Thursday night at 9 p.m. during our show. It'll be the start of the second hour of the show, 9 p.m. We'll talk probably about pandemic stuff, starting at 8 o'clock. We'll do our regular show. 9 o'clock is where the big announcement's going to be. So tune in, stay tuned for it. You will want to be here at 9 o'clock next week. Okay. We'll do it live. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live.
Do it live. RedMaryland.com, the home base for all things Red Maryland. Of course, a lot of great stuff there. And we would be happy to, and we would be happy.
Henry Ruggs III is the Las Vegas Raiders' first pick.
Who the hell is
wide receiver from Alabama?
Henry Ruggs?
Justin Reedy happy.
Is that a real name?
I just read the name.
Ruggs like that's not a typo? Henry Ruggs.
It may be a typo, but that's what it says. Henry Ruggs III. That's their official tweet from the Las Vegas Raiders Twitter feed.
Okay. Does it make you feel old that Mr. Ruggs was born in 1999?
Yes. Thanks for
Makes me feel old too. And I am younger than you are.
He's younger than my daughter. Yes.
Wow, really?
Yeah. She was born in 98. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure of her exact birth date. So I know, again, she's in grad school now, or will be going to grad school.
That's correct.
When we're allowed to have nice things again. If you have any complaints about anything that we said tonight, and I'm sure there are people who are going to have complaints.
Yeah, by all means, post it on Facebook and share this video. Absolutely. Make that part of your complaint.
Please do. Or you can email us, redmaryland@gmail.com. That's how you can do that. You can call or text the Red Maryland Talkback line, 410-205-4875.
What's that number?
410-205-4875. We will share your comments during next week's show. Okay? If you think that we got it completely wrong, you tell us. We love feedback. The more negative, the better. Okay. I will tell you, in addition to next week's big announcement, we'll talk about the pandemic. We'll recap the election results up in the seventh district special election, and anything else that comes up during the week as well. Greg, any final thoughts?
Thanks everybody for listening. Stay safe, and remember, we're all in this together.
Indeed. For Greg, I am Brian. Thanks for listening and watching. You have been listening to Red Maryland Radio on the Red Maryland Network.
Radio, tell me everything